already.
I think it's still preparing on Zoom, and I see that I believe we are ready. Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome today. We're excited to have you join us as we do a demonstration of Pontoon, which is our uh, tool that we use at Mozilla to handle all the localization for our products, websites, and everything else. My name is Brian Olson. I'm a member of the localization team at Mozilla. And I'm going to be doing a quick demo of everything you need to know to get started translating. With me, I have Delphine, who's another member of our team. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Delphine. I'm program manager at Mozilla for mobile localizations. And today I will be moderating on both YouTube channel and Matrix on the Elton and Matrix. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and we will be answering them throughout the demo.
Okay, so with that, let's get started. So first off, the first thing you need to get started at going to get translated. Blah, nerves. Okay. The first thing you need to know to get started translating on Pontoon is the website. So you can access Pontoon at pontoon.mozilla.org right there. So Pontoon, oh, I should probably be sharing my screen. Hold on one second.
I will face mute and be monitoring from now on.
Okay. Okay, so pontoon.mozilla.org is where our tool exists. Um, Now, this is an open source tool. So for those of you running open source projects that need localization, you can always use this as well. Um, the source code you can find on GitHub. So for using Mozilla's instance of Pontoon, you first need to create a Mozilla account. And you can do this by clicking the sign in button here if you don't have an account, or you can just use your account to log in to create a Pontoon account. So I'm going to do that here just to demonstrate what the sign in process looks like. I have an account already, so I can just click sign in, and it just opens up to my instance of Pontoon. So for the rest of this presentation, I'm going to be using our staging server, so I don't actually mess with any of the translations um, for our production. So I'm going to switch over to a different tab with a different user, um, and we can get started. So if you have any questions as we're going through this demonstration, just feel free to use the YouTube chat or the Matrix chat, and we'll try to answer them as they come in. There'll also be time at the end if you have any final questions if something isn't clear. Um, so with that, let's get started. So this is the main home page here. You'll see this if this is your first time logging in. What you can do if you want to get started localizing right away is you can click this button, Start Localizing Now. And usually what will happen is it'll take you to this Teams page. So let's look at the Teams page. So this Teams page has all of the locales, like all the languages that Mozilla translates into. So we have, I think it's over 100 here. So you can see it's a very long list. So it's a little hard to find your language, especially if it's at the end of the alphabet. So what you can do is here in this little search form is search for your language. You can use the locale code or you can just use the English language name. So in my case, I speak Japanese, so I'm going to search for the Japanese language here. And this way we can see, okay, Japanese is right here. It has a little bit of statistics for the locale itself, including like the progress of all the projects. So I'm just going to click on here, and that will take me to a list of projects that Japanese is translating into. So here we can see all different types of projects, um, and we can see things like what are the priority projects. So we can click here priority and sort the list by what projects are high priority. So things that we that are looking for more translations much sooner. You can also look at this target date, which since this is a staging server, it's very out of date, but usually projects will have a target date for the next build. So we know when projects need a translation by. We can sort by latest activity, so see which accounts have, which projects have activity recently. We can sort by project, and you can click either to see which ones need the most work or which ones are already done. So in this case, I'm going to look for Mozilla accounts, which is mostly done, but it only has a few strings left to translate. And you can actually see that information by hovering over the project. You see all these different statuses like translated, which means strings that have translations, missing, which are strings that need translations. So I'm going to click on Mozilla accounts to open that project, and then we get the project view. So we see here is a list of individual resources or files. These resources each contain a number of strings. They can contain a variable number of strings. Um, and again, we can sort of sort this list by which ones are not 100%. So ones that are 100% have all the strings translated and approved. This we have two files that have missing strings. So we can highlight and we see this settings.ftl file has 25 missing strings. So let's click on the file to open up the translator view. So this is the main working view. So when you're translating, this is what it's going to look like. This is the desktop view. So you can see, as I'm using a desktop computer, this is what it'll look like when you're translating there. We also have a responsive mobile view. So if you don't often use a computer but want to contribute while using your mobile phone, there's also a responsive mobile view that you can use. But for purposes of this presentation, I'm going to be doing a demonstration using the desktop view. Um, so let's break down what this screen has. There's a lot there, but it's mostly a 3-column layout. You can see that on the left there's a column here, in the middle column, and then a right column. So this is the string view or the list of strings for the file. Um, the middle column is the actual translator view. So that's where you'd be doing most of the work. And then the right side has some information that'll be useful when you're translating. It has things like terms and some machinery. And I'll get into all of this later. So let's start with the left side, which is the list of strings. Here we can see the number of strings. We can see on top we have English, and then on bottom we have Japanese, since this is the Japanese locale. So the top string is the source string, which is what you'd be translating from, and then the bottom string will be the target string, so the translated string. So if you're translating in Spanish, you would see Spanish if there's a translation already, or if there's no translation, it would be empty. So right now we see just a list of strings with translations already. You can see with this little box here on the left, this green box, this is showing that this is a completed translation. We can actually filter this list to only show strings that need translations. How we can do this by using this search bar here, there's actually a button right here with a filter symbol on there, so that we can actually click this to filter by different sorts of statuses. So in this case, I want to look at strings that need translation since I'm going to be translating today. So I'll click here on this missing, and it'll actually remove all of the completed translations and only show strings that need translation. So as you can see now, we have the source string on the top here, but no translated strings. There's actually, since this is a missing thing, the missing filter, there are some strings that do have translations, like you can see password here. Um, this means that someone suggested a translation, but that translation hasn't been approved yet. Um, and I'll go into this in a little bit more detail a little bit later on, but let's go straight into the middle column here, uh, where we talk about the translate, the editing window. So we can break this down. We'll start with this section here. So you can see right here, this is link damage. So that's the string that we need to translate. So we're going to be translating this. Um, but there's actually more than just the source string here. We actually have a few more supplemental information underneath. So we have comment. So this is a comment from the developer about the string. So usually we can use this information to find out more about like where the string is being used, or a little bit more about the context in which it's being used. So this comment says the user followed a link to report an invalid sign-in attempt that was received by email, but the link was damaged. So, for example, a mistype or broken, mistyped URL, or broken, or it was broken by the email client. So that way we know, okay, so this will show up when someone clicks a broken link. So that's what it means by link damaged. Okay. Um, there's group comments, which is even more comments. Here we have context. Let's break this context one down. This is actually divided up by this string ID, the file that it's located in, and then the project that it's from. Um, in particular, I want to highlight this string ID here. This can often provide a lot of useful information. So for example, we know that at the end here, it says header. So we know that this is actually going to show up as a header in whatever screen this is showing up in Mozilla accounts. Sometimes it'll say button or link, and that way we can tell, like, for example, if it says like bookmark and it's a button, we can know that maybe it's a button for creating a bookmark, or it could be a button doing something else. So this is actually very useful information. So I encourage when you're translating to pay attention to this ID in particular. So we actually see here, so underneath here, we have some text. This is the editing window. So I can actually type in this. Usually I don't want to add gibberish, but we have text, Japanese text that's already been pre-filled here. This is one of the features of Pontoon. This match is being taken from translation memory. So if you don't know what translation memory is, it's basically a long history of all the strings that have been translated for in Pontoon. So it's basically this we have a list of source strings and then the associated translation. So in this case, somewhere someone translated link damaged already, and so we have 100% match. So the English source string is 100% the same. Um, so Pontoon pre-fills that when it's 100% match into the editing window. And so we can actually, instead of having to type everything out, we can actually just compare the source string with the translated string. And if it looks like it's a good translation, we can actually just suggest this. So looking here, it says link damage and it says Hussein no link. So this actually is looks like a perfect translation. So what I can do next is click this suggest button. and this will suggest the translation. Um, so this, when I say suggest translation, the way Pontoon works is for most contributors, especially new contributors starting out, they have a role called contributor. So they are able to suggest translations, but the final translations, uh, those translations won't make it into the final product until it's been reviewed by another person from the locale. Um, so there's people with different permissions called translators or team managers, and they have the ability to approve or reject translations. So in this case, since I don't have the correct permissions, I'm just a new contributor, I'm going to click this suggest button, and then someone from my team will be notified that there's new unreviewed translations, and then they can review that and either approve or reject. So I'm going to push this blue button and suggest this translation. And as you can see, now the up above and above here, we can see that the string that we just looked at has a translation associated with it. And I'll go back here and click on that and see, we can see underneath now, there's a translation there. And actually, this is uh, the translation history. So actually, multiple people can suggest translations, or people can go back and if they see the string in the product and it's like, oh, this isn't 100% right, um, this is a better translation, we can actually suggest more translations and then um, determine which is the best string, but that history will be saved here. So I'm going to go back to the next one. So you can see in this one, this does not have a match from translation memory, 100% match from translation memory. So this box, this field here is empty. Um, Now, you might notice that this string here is not actually, it looks different than just normal text. That's because this is a placeholder. So these placeholders are uh, they can either be by themselves or as part of a full sentence. But these placeholders here will in when you're using the software will actually be replaced by text. In this case, um, it says product Mozilla Monitor. This is a brand term for Mozilla's product monitor. Um, so if we wanted to, we could actually search the whole project to find out what text would actually be shown here. So that's what I'll do is I will copy this string and I will search for it. But it doesn't show up because we're just looking for missing strings. And also we are in just one of the files in this project. So actually what I can do is I can click this all resources button and this will open up all of the files in the project into this left window. And so I'll try searching again with, now that I have all of the strings of this project here, I can copy and paste that. And I see, oh, there is a translation here. Uh, so I can look at this context here and see that this ID matches what I was searching for. And so I know that anytime I see this placeholder, it will be replaced with Mozilla Monitor, this translation right here. So let's go back. I'm going to go back to the settings file and filter to just the missing strings again. I'm going to go back to this string here. Okay, so typically these placeholders, all we do is it's kind of like a variable in math. Like when we put the variable where it would make sense in our sentence. In this case, it's just by itself. So we can just use this placeholder by itself in translation. So I could type it out, but that's a little bit cumbersome. So actually, another nice feature of Pontoon is we can actually just click, and when we click it, it'll put that placeholder spelled correctly with no typographical errors, so it'll actually won't have any errors in production. Um, it'll just put it right where our cursor is. So, I mean, we could click it multiple times, but we don't want to do that because it only shows up once in the string. So I'll just click here and that's it. I can just suggest this as a translation. And I can do the same thing. Just click the placeholder button and click suggest. Um, so moving on now, we see this one has a match from translation memory, but also we just noticed that the right side has been populated with something called terms. So I'll explain this right column now. So this right column is divided into a few different functions, but the first one that we can see here is terms. So these are terminology, which are uh, basically strings that have a predefined translation. So for example, we see right here that's underlined by this green bar is a term. So sign in. So typically, like when you have like a Mozilla account, there's a lot of encouraging to sign in various places. We want to make sure that this is consistent in translation uh, throughout the project. So that's why we're using these terms to be able to give you uh, which translation we should use. So it's saying in, so which is Japanese for sign in. Um, so I'm going to double check this translation to make sure that it's using the proper term, which it is right there. It says Rogin right there. And then we can say, okay, this looks good. But I'm going to explain the rest of the right side now, now that we have a chance here. So we have these terms, um, and underneath, we can actually see this machinery tab here. This has a list of strings. So we can see here that this has the list of translation memory. It says 100%. So this is a hit from our translation memory against this string, and we see that the source string matches this string 100%. So we can actually, instead of having it pre-filled, we could remove it and click this button here, and it will add the exact same translation that was pre-filled earlier. You can also see below it Google Translate. So sometimes you can use if there's no pre-existing translation, we could use a machine translation suggestion right here. So I'll add that. So this provides a machine translation suggestion. Machine translation isn't 100% accurate all of the time, just as 100% matches aren't necessarily accurate 100% of the time. But in this case, like if we use this, we can check it against this and we see, oh, this is using a different Japanese word for sign in. So instead, I don't want to use this Japanese word for sign in. I want to use login. So I can actually click the term there and it replaced what I highlighted with the correct term. But in this case, I'm not going to use the machine translation. So instead, I'm going to delete this again. I can press clear and I'm going to click translation memory and use this as the final translation. So there are a couple more things here. So by default, terms and machinery are highlighted here. But there's also a comments section and a locales section here. So I'll explain what this comments section is here for. So this is a source string comments section. So if I ever have a question about what a string means, or if I want to have some sort of conversation with either the project manager of this on Mozilla's side, or maybe start a conversation within my locale, I can actually write a comment. And that any comments that are written on a string will appear here. So usually it'll appear like right alongside there. I'll get more into comments in a little bit later. Finally, this locale section shows the translations for all the other locales. So for someone who speaks Japanese and is translating Japanese, this might not be as useful as, for example, someone who speaks uh, Mexican Spanish. They can actually look at different flavors of Spanish to see how they translated it. It's just one more way to get some references. Um, so in this case, it says the source string is valid password required. I'm looking at this string, and actually this particular string doesn't actually, this is saying, please enter a valid password, and then in parentheses, like this is required. This is actually looking more like um, a form entry uh, string. But as I look at this context, this is actually an error string. So I think this might not be the best translation, even though it's 100% match from translation memory. So there's things we can do here. We can use this. We could use this concordance search um, or this machinery tab here and look at different translations that also exist. So for example, password required, which is similar to valid password required, but not quite. But this one, we could potentially use this as a reference for translation, maybe adding the valid part back ourselves manually. Um, but another thing we can do here is actually look at the um, context around it. It's like, what are other strings in this file? So I click, it doesn't show up right away, but there's a button you can click that will show like strings that surround this particular string. So in this case, it's showing me these different strings here. And I see, oh, there's a valid email required. Okay. And I can look at this translation here. 有効なメールアドレスが必要です. So actually, what I can do is, if I want to keep it consistent with other error messages, I can see like, oh, okay, I can actually use 有効な, which is uh, the translation for valid here. I can actually just copy that structure for consistency. So I'll click, I'll just, type it out. 有効なメールアドレスが必要です. So now I'm suggesting a new translation, but it is matching a similar error string. And so if I click suggest here, it'll add that. And what happened here is like it moved on to the next string in the string list. And I see this is what I referenced here. And you can see that, for example, the string history for this, that this was suggested about a year ago. Okay. 1 second, let me double check. So the next step is, so I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to move on to a different string here just to demonstrate one more thing. Let's see. I got to find it first. All right. Here's one more string. This is actually an example of a placeholder being used in part of a sentence. As you can see, this doesn't have a 100% match, but if I look in the machinery here, I can see that there's a 92% match from translation memory. You can actually see here in red and green the difference from this source string to the source string that I'm translating now. So I can look here and I see, oh, there was a translation, but the only difference is that the placeholder, like the characters around the placeholder are slightly different. So looks like I can actually use this particular translation. So I'm going to click it, but I need to adjust the placeholder. So what I'll do here is I'll just highlight this placeholder, this old placeholder, click there, and voila, it's ready to submit. So as you can see in English, this check your email for the authorization code sent to email. Um, this email is going to be a um, email address because we know from here that it says where email is the email address entered for the sign in attempt. So we can use the comment to understand what kind of text is going to be replaced here. So even though email is at the end of this English sentence, in Japanese, the word order is a little bit different. And so we can actually put it in the middle of the sentence here. So this allows us to be flexible in how we're constructing our sentences in translation. So we're not beholden to making weird or awkward phrases to make sure that email is always at the end. We can actually put that placeholder anywhere in the sentence. So I'm going to suggest that. And then um, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this. So what would we do if, for example, there wasn't a comment here that explained what email was? And I wasn't quite sure, like maybe I would understand from context, but maybe I'm not quite sure. Do I know, is this going to be something else? Um, if I'm not sure about what anything about a sentence is, I can actually, instead of trying to make my best guess and hoping it works, I can actually use this button, this request context or report issue. So if I click this button, it'll actually throw me into the comments section for the source string, and it'll add a tag. So this is a tag for the project manager of this. Um, so this will typically be someone from Mozilla who is working with the development team. So we can answer any questions about a project. So this is tagging me. And then I can ask a question like, uh, what does email like mean for this sentence? Maybe not the best comment, but I was just thinking on the fly. So what after I've typed it in, I can actually click this send button. Well, normally I would, but it's timing out. I'll just press enter. But um, maybe I can show an example of a question later on, but right now, looks like I'm having some technical difficulties. So we'll just skip from that from now. But the main thing to note here is that if you're ever stumped on a translation, um, you can always use this, especially if you think the source string is unclear. Uh, there's actually the ability to comment here on individual strings. And you can also do this to um, you can also flag people using this, excuse me. You can also flag people in comments by using this @ symbol and starting to type a name. So, for example, Brian. Okay, so it's for whatever reason it's not working right now. So I'm just gonna jump on. But note that like if you need to ask a question to somebody, and you know their username, you can actually start pressing use @ and then start typing part of their name, and it'll bring up a list of users. So I'll attempt that maybe later on, but I'm going to move on to um, the next topic, which um, is so for this so in as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we have a list of files, and you actually note that there's different types of files here. So we have files that are ending in .ftl, which is Mozilla's fluent syntax, which is actually a very advanced syntax that allows us to do some pretty cool things. There's also uh, a lot of different formats that Pontoon can handle. So, for example, JSON or get text, which we actually have a get text file here. Um, So I'm going to show you that just how there's always different syntax for depending on the file type. So for example, we can see here, this placeholder is using %s, whereas when we were working in the Fluent file, we saw that placeholders are separated by different characters. So each file type has its own um, quirks, but typically Pontoon is smart enough to know what each different placeholder is. Um, so it will highlight this with this gray bar here. So typically you don't really have to worry about it. So as you can see here, I actually in advance created a pinned comment here. So this is something that a project owner can do. And here you can see, like, when you see this comment section, there's a 1 there. We can actually notice that there's the comment that we can look at when we're referencing this file, referencing this string. And we can see that this actually added more information to the string itself. And actually, the pinned comment also appears here. So you don't even have to click that comments button to view the comment. So with that being said, I'm going to show you one example of a string that is using plurals. And I'm going to have to open that. So what I'll do is I'll just click all strings. And then so here is an example of an advanced Fluent string that has plural being using plurals. So for example, when I say plurals, I mean the string can be either singular or plural. And that's a very English way of explaining it, right? So other languages have many different ways of, they have plurals for one and a different way to write words for 2, 4, 6, 8. So our Fluent syntax and Pontoon is able to actually create different patterns based on that language's grammar. So for example, in English, we often have a singular using the number 1, and then every other number, 0 and 2 plus, uses a plural syntax. So we can see here, this has 2 plurals here. Japanese, unfortunately, well, fortunately for some people, is very simple in terms of there's no singular, there's no plurals. They don't have the concept of plurals in their grammar, so they only need one translation. But if we want to use use a different language, for example, we could use Castilian Spanish for the exact same string. And we see here that the Fluent editor actually goes into this Fluent mode where we can actually write the exact same translation. So we have, for singular, we have the amount al dia, and then for 2 plus, we have amount cada interval count ds. So dia ds. So we are actually able to create grammatical strings uh, in in a way that's very easy and fluent. So just if you ever encounter a string like this, just know that that's what's going on. All right, so I'm realizing that I am taking a lot of time, but this was basically a breakdown of the whole translation flow. Um, there might be some things you're not familiar with. And if there's any questions you ever have, you can always reach out to the Mozilla localization team. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. One of which is through this request context if it's regarding a certain string, or you could actually reach out to the project manager separately, and I'll show you how you can do that. So I will jump back to Mozilla accounts. And you can see here at the top of this, in this section right here, we have a bunch of different information. But what we're looking for here is this project manager. And we can click on the name to bring up who the project manager for this uh, project is. And you actually get their email address. So you can actually contact us via email by finding us through this interface. So if you haven't seen this before, this is actually a user profile, and you can actually see their activity. For example, I'm going to go to this user's new user profile. And you'll see that we submitted some translations today. So we have about 7 translations that are unreviewed. Um, so how does that review process work? I'm going to break that down just really quickly so that we can have an idea of how that works. So I actually have a separate user with different translations or with different permissions that I can now go and look at unreviewed translations. So actually, um, one other thing that I should probably actually point out is there's a little notification bell here. So you actually might get notifications if there's ever comments in a string that you've translated, or if, for example, you've submitted translations and they were reviewed, you can actually check in those notifications. It'll keep you updated with your latest status. Um, so what I'm going to do here now is I am someone with the review permissions, so I can actually go in and so we were working on Mozilla accounts here. And actually, if you didn't notice this before, you see this blue, this blue light bulb. This is actually telling me that there are unreviewed translations for this project. So as someone with permissions to review translations, this gives me an idea that, oh, I need to take a look at here. So I'm going to click here. This is unreviewed. And I can actually see all the different submitted translations that require review. Um, so I'm going to, for example, look at this particular string that reviewed. I can see that here, I can see the person who submitted it, which was what we just used, when they submitted it, and then what their translation is. And actually, that translation will also appear here. Um, I can actually go here, click a comment, and I can say, see if it's not working. No, still not working. But I can add a comment here if I want to ask a question to the person who translated it. Or if it looks good, I can actually just click this green button. And now you see that it turned green. So that's a typical review process. If, for example, you've submitted translations and want to talk to someone on your team about those translations, um, there's actually another view I can show you. We briefly looked at that, but we have a team menu here, or this team view. And actually, I can click on here, this contributors button, and I can see who my managers are for my locale, who the translators are for my locale. So I can actually use this view to actually reach out to someone, either a manager or translator, and ask the question that I wanted to ask, or I can ask for a review or something like that. So once all the translations are approved, what will happen next is the typically those translations will appear in the next build. So it really depends on the project. Some projects are constantly being built. For example, Firefox has a very set defined release schedule. For other products, sometimes those builds will come uh, at different times. So if you ever are wondering about when you can see your translations appearing in the product, that's another opportunity you can use to reach out to the project manager. So now that we had, oops, sorry, I'm going to go back here. So now that we had an approved translation, we can actually see um, that our stats change, and these keep up to date. So you can actually see, for example, if I were contributing for over a year, you could see like all the contributions that we made over the year. We can also see our statistics here about our approval rate, um, including, for example, like how many strings we've translated and how many have been approved. And you can actually get this activity down here to actually see like what uh, specific strings were translated. This is pretty useful to both see how your strings are going, but also, as you build up your translation history, you can actually use this to, show off all the contributions you've been doing as a volunteer for Mozilla. So, I think uh, this kind of demonstrates the overall translation flow. Um, I think there's just one last thing I want to show you. Now that I've shown you a profile, there's actually a couple things in your settings that you might want to take a look at. Um, so here at the bottom here, we have these default locales. Now we have a home page and a preferred source locale. So this home page here, you can actually set this, and actually Pontoon will generally set this as you start translating automatically. But you can actually set, so when you go to pontoon.mozilla.org, the first page that shows for this particular user is this splash page. This is like the one that's shown to people that aren't logged in as well. But what you can actually do is you can set this default homepage to a particular locale. So instead of having to click on Teams, anytime I go to my homepage, it'll actually just open up the Japanese locale page. So I don't have to actually click through and find um, my locale every single time. Um, The other setting that I wanted to show you here is this preferred source locale. So for example, if I'm translating into a language, but my English is, I'm not as comfortable with English as I am with a different locale, I can actually set it to, well, we'll just do Japanese. Let's see. I can actually set it to Japanese here. And then when I go into uh, a project, we'll just randomly click on something here. So instead of showing the English translations, it'll actually show the Japanese translations. Or, for example, if I'm more comfortable with Spanish as my primary language, I could set this to Spanish, and I would see the Spanish translations if they're available. So that's just another handy thing to help you in your translation process. So with that, I think I've covered almost everything you need to know to get started. Um, so we have about 10 minutes left, so we have time. I will stop sharing my screen here. So I'm happy to open the floor to any questions, or if there aren't any questions, we'll stop here. Delphine, are there any questions
So
in
I've
chat?
I've been monitoring. There have not been any questions. I see a few people have joined on YouTube and are saying hi. So hello back. Don't hesitate if you have any questions on this. But no, I did not get any questions as up to now.
Okay. Well,
We can wait
I'll wait about, we'll say
a few
30
seconds.
seconds. Yeah.
Yeah, last chance, everyone. No, it's not the last chance. You can always ask questions later and we'll make sure we get them answered as well.
Okay. I think we'll just call it there then. Thank you everyone for attending, and I hope this was helpful to you to get started. Do feel free to get in touch or leave comments. We will be following up through our social channels with a uh, sort of satisfaction survey about this. So if you found this useful, please do give us that positive feedback, or if you felt like this could have been better, any constructive criticism is welcome as well. So with that, I want to say thank you to everyone who watched, and also thank you, Delphine, for uh, sitting in and uh, making sure I didn't say anything weird. So thanks.